Hello everyone! Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley. Today we are cooking a Thai noodle dish called Pad Thai. Pad Thai, if you've never had it, is a Thai noodle dish that relies very heavily on the use of tamarind paste. I've definitely made Pad Thai on stream before. Shallot, yeah, you're here first. I guess you are the first. Well, I think 3 people are here. But you're the first commenter though. Cool. Pad Thai, if you've never had it before, relies very heavily on the use of tamarind paste. So tamarind paste is very interesting because most people usually only have tamarind as a powder or like a powdered spice. But it is a very, very critical ingredient, and it's honestly one of the only noodle dishes where I've seen the use of tamarind paste. I'm sure someone here will eventually tell me of another dish. But definitely, probably, at least in Thai cooking, the most prominent noodle dish which uses the use of tamarind paste. So, if you have any questions, feel free to drop your questions in the comments. What kind of protein are we using? Oh, I forgot to put that in the title. Today we're cooking with chicken, chicken thigh, actually, which I've most traditionally, or most normally when I do Pad Thai, I have done it with chicken breast, usually. And I think I did, when I did the recipe video, I did it with tofu, actually. So definitely, if you're vegetarian, you can totally do it with tofu. Or you could also do it with really any kind of meat that you want to. You could probably do it with pork. You could do it with beef too. Probably the most traditional is going to be chicken. I have gone back and forth on using whether or not I wanted to use chicken or chicken breast or chicken thigh. I'm going to use chicken thigh today. This might be maybe the first time I've ever done it with chicken thigh. And I'm kind of leaning towards it's going to be the better choice because it has a little bit more fat. And Pad Thai is already a very, very lean noodle dish. You could even say that it is arguably, at least in the realm of like Thai food, probably one of the healthier Thai noodle dishes because it is really, really lean. There's not a lot of fat going on. So because of that, I think the use of chicken thigh is actually going to benefit quite a bit because chicken thigh, as opposed to chicken breast, has quite a bit of fat. So we're going to get a lot of fat derived from our chicken thigh. If you have any questions for me, feel free to drop your questions in the comments. No Soup, hey, how's it going? Yeah. Hello to everyone on YouTube too. For those of you who are just joining for the first time, as with pretty much every stream that I do, I also stream over on YouTube, so already watching us on YouTube too. Over on YouTube, that's where I also post all of the schedules for everything that I'm going to be cooking. So for the folks who are tuning in on YouTube, those folks probably, or hopefully, already knew what we were going to be cooking today. That's because there's a huge schedule of everything that I'm going to be cooking on stream for the next, I think, 2.5 weeks maybe. Arguably the best part of the chicken, yeah. Totally. I would say maybe the chicken drumstick. Well, I don't know. But yeah, over on YouTube, that's where the schedule of everything that I cook lives. On top of that, I also post a recipe video that goes along with pretty much everything that I cook. Generally, when I'm cooking something, if I'm not filming it at the time, there's a recipe video that goes along with the thing that I'm cooking. So the recipe for this Pad Thai went up on my YouTube channel a couple months ago or so. And that happens every Friday, so we stream every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 PST, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. PST. And every Friday there's a new recipe video. So last Friday I did a recipe video for the Beijing beef from Panda Express, so adding to our series on Chinese American food and kind of exploring Chinese American food, what makes Chinese American food so American, and all of those American elements that goes into Chinese American food. So that's why, if you're wondering why I cook so many Panda Express dishes, that's the reason why. Is because I personally find Chinese American or Americanized Asian cuisine really, really fascinating because very little of it, especially like Chinese American food, still remains Chinese, really. Most of it, mostly when I cook Panda Express recipes, really to me it's just American food. So it's just basically just fried chicken, American fried chicken. So stuff like that. If you're interested in content like that, I recommend hopping over to the YouTube channel and checking some of that out. I'm watching with a couple other folks. I see No Soup and Damon are already up on YouTube right now. So lots of folks over on YouTube already, so if you're interested in cooking stuff yourself, I recommend bopping over to YouTube and checking some of that out. We're working our way to a, what are we doing? 1,500 subscriber goal by the end of the month. Pretty sure we'll hit it. So if you want to help us hit that subscriber goal, hop over to YouTube, check some of that stuff out. Lots of fun content popping up over there. Pad Thai Americanized more, yeah. It can be done either way. Pad Thai, so Bijini asked if pad thai is like an Americanized dish. It is definitely a very, very popular dish in America, so I'll start by saying that. I don't know a lot about like the origins of, especially like Thai food, but I know that in America it is very, very popular, and the way that it's prepared in America has a lot of like Americanized qualities. So to me, so for example, so the pad thai that we're going to be making today, I think it's the version of my pad thai is mostly pretty traditional, but we are going to be using carrots, and the use of carrots in a pad thai is definitely an American choice. But I honestly feel like, as like, especially just like generally speaking, for like most Thai food, the use of veggies it's really not about like which type of veggie. It's more about that you include veggies. So when you use carrots, really what it means is like include some form of veggie. So sometimes I'll like substitute. I often substitute carrots out for turnips or even parsnips. Any of those like root veggies will work. But definitely the use of carrots in a pad thai, that comes from America. So it really depends on. So to answer your question, veggie. To answer your question, it really depends on which pad thai you're having. Definitely, if you're having pad thai in Thailand, it's pretty traditional. But as opposed to like, if we were talking about something like, you know, honey sesame chicken, that is not in any way a Chinese dish. That's just purely American food. So, but pad thai, it definitely has traditional origins for sure. Beef noodle soup, yeah, noodle min. I've been working on a noodle min recipe. All of the soups are really, really tricky because it requires that you perfect a broth. Broths are really, really tricky because anything that requires a broth that's the kind of stuff that people spend hundreds of years perfecting that sort of stuff. So like trying to perfect it overnight is going to be really tricky. So I've been working on a neuro min, but like most of what it takes to perfect a neuro min. So I'm talking about Much Psychology asked about Taiwanese beef noodle soup, which in Chinese is called a niuro min. So niuro means beef, min meaning noodles, so beef noodle soup. But the like big part of like what it takes to make a really, really great niuro min is about the broth, and that's the sort of stuff that's like family secrets for hundreds of years, closely guarded secrets of restaurants, stuff like that. So things like ramens, niuro mins, anything like that. It's like I could probably make a pretty good one. I don't know that I can make a really, really great one, but I could probably make a pretty good one. So that's going to come soon, though. Details on my knife. Yeah, lots of folks ask about this knife, actually. It's not a Japanese knife. It's actually a French knife. So the main distinction that makes it a French knife, the distinction that makes it a French knife is that it's a French branded knife. But mainly, though, it's its shape. So the shape, this sort of profile and shape, so it's really straight here and then a very thin. And it's also slightly longer than most chef's knives. So I think like the standard chef's knife, at least like the ones that most people buy are like the Wusthoffs and the German and maybe even the Japanese chef's knives. I haven't used a lot of Japanese chef's knives, but it's a little bit longer. So this knife is 12 inches. The standard Wusthof chef's knife is actually only 8 inches, so it's a little bit longer, which took a little bit getting used to. But this knife is a Pernod Nugent. And I'm sure I'm butchering that. But it is a vintage French chef's knife. I think it's from maybe the 70s or so. And it's made of carbon steel. That's why it kind of looks rusted. On camera, it looks a little bit rusted. It's not rusted. It's just patinaed. But definitely on camera, like when I look at it on camera and stuff, it looks rusted. Alright, so I just finished chopping up. That was fine mint on some garlic and ginger, and right now I'm chopping up a shallot. So if you're following, I know a couple folks are following on YouTube, and if you're following me or following the written recipe, you will notice that there is not a shallot in that written recipe. So if you don't have a shallot, that's totally fine. You can also, if you don't have a shallot but you have a purple or a red onion, that's a really great substitute. You can use a quarter of a purple onion and it will work also. Or if you don't have a shallot, just leave it out. And this is maybe the first time that I've used a shallot, so yeah, definitely, I think it's going to go really great, though, when you buy store-bought pad thai sauces. So today we're actually using the store-bought pad thai because I couldn't find any tamarind paste, so this is just pad thai sauce, which is it's kind of like a mix of stuff, but what it's really is a mix of tamarind paste plus a couple other things, and the main things that it's a mix of is garlic and shallot. Those are the main things that are mixed into that sauce. So I'm going to use a little bit extra shallot and a little bit less tamarind paste. and I think it's going to pop really nicely. Also, if you're following the written recipe, I'm leaving out the green onions today. So I'm replacing the green onions essentially with this shallot. Cool. Alright, so that's my shallot. I just did a fine dice on this, so that's a pretty fine. We're going for pretty small on this shallot. We don't really want it to like exist in our stir fry. We really want to use this as like part of our aromatic quality. So we're looking for, these are our 3 aromatics. So this is shallots, garlic, and ginger. And these are the first 3 things that are going to go into our wok. So we're going to add those in first, and we're going to bloom out all of those aromatic qualities. And all of those aromatic qualities are going to release, and it's going to be the baseline level of umami that we build out from, starting from there. Yeah. Nice knife. Yeah, totally. I love this knife. But also, if you can't, like, if you're interested, I would say if you're interested in finding like cool vintage knives and stuff, or really just like finding a nice knife that doesn't cost a huge amount of money, estate sales or like thrift shops, stuff like that. Really, estate sales have, because they have a whole bunch of like kitchenware, and then just troll the kitchen and see what you can find there. I found 2 of these, so I own 3 of these knives actually. So I own 2 identical ones and a slightly larger. This is a 16-inch Sabatier. So I got all 3 of these knives for 20 bucks, and this is probably like $700-800 worth of knife right here. So I couldn't believe it. I found it. I think it was altogether I paid like 30 bucks for all of these knives, and it was really sweet. So estate sales, if you've never trolled an estate sale, go troll through them, and they have all kinds of cool shit. But also, more importantly, if you can't find a cool knife, or if you're like can't afford a cool knife, just make sure that your knife is sharp. That's what's most important, is that you have a really sharp knife. And as long as your knife is super sharp, it's going to be just fine. Alright, so normally when I do a pad thai, I usually do a julienne cut. I'm just going to go for super thin planks today, because I don't think it's that important. And also, mainly, I just don't really feel like cutting a julienne cut. So I'm just going for really thin planks, which kind of just looks like this. If you have a mandolin, you can also do this in a mandolin too. But if you're really committed, go for your julienne cut. Chef's knives to go. Oh, cool. No, totally, yeah. Yeah, I've never actually like done a lot of shopping for knives. The first set of chef's knives I owned was just like a set that I got at Costco, and I used it for like 10 years. It was like one of those like really colorful Komachi knives, and it was like a set of 4. And I literally used that set of knives for a full 10 years before I found these knives. So. Good knife work, yeah. So lots of folks are worried or scared of proper claw technique because it requires that you get your hands really close to the knife. But contrary to what people are afraid of, the closer your fingers are to the knife, the reason that we keep our fingers really close to the knife, so I have all 5 of my fingers. We don't want to cut like this because it's very likely that I'm going to cut a finger off right now. I bet like there's 3,500 people on this stream right now. People are probably very concerned about my fingers right now being like this. We don't want to do this. Estate sales, so E-S-T-A-T-E. So we don't want to cut like this. What we want to do is pinch our fingers in like this. So there's no real opportunity for your fingers to get chopped off if your fingers are clawed in like this. So we call this a claw. And what I'm doing is I'm putting my knife up against the knuckles of my right hand. And so right now I'm doing a pull cut. So I'm pulling the knife backward, and we're just giving it, so if I want to do a push cut, we're going downward, and I'm keeping the knife right up against my knuckles. What's happening is because I know that the knife is up against my knuckles, this is how you see people, like, I could like look up at the camera and I could probably chop right now, and that's because I know exactly where the knife is right now. So I'm looking straight up, I'm not even looking down right now, and that's because your knuckles are telling you where the knife is. So I don't really actually even need to look. As long as I have contact with the knuckles on my knife, the knife is telling me where the knife is. Yeah, totally. So yeah, that's like just like really fundamental cutting technique. Is we have you want to make sure that that knife is right up against your knuckles. If it's like floating around, you might that's when you're in the potential of cutting your finger off, and that's when you need to be really concerned. Cool. Hello to everyone just joining. My name is Wesley. I see that lots of folks are coming in and out. We must be on top broadcast right now. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Today I'm doing a pad thai, which is a Thai noodle dish. One of my favorite Thai noodle dishes. Here in America, it's probably one of the more popular noodle dishes that you'll find in like Thai takeout and stuff. If you have any questions for me, feel free to drop your questions in the comments. I know lots of folks are already popping in the comments already. So feel free, if I miss your comments too, I know there's lots of questions coming in already. So if I miss your question, feel free to repeat it and I'll do my best to get to yours. If you're interested in what we're cooking, as with pretty much every stream, lots of folks are already watching over on YouTube. Julia, yeah. Yeah, lots of folks are watching over on YouTube. Julia, I'll get to your question really soon, in a minute. Lots of folks are already watching over on YouTube. YouTube is, so the folks who are watching on YouTube probably already know what we were going to be cooking, and that's because over on YouTube I have been in the habit of posting everything that I'm going to be cooking. So there's a nice schedule of everything that I'm going to cook, including the recipe for today. So today's recipe, I posted what we were going to be cooking. That came out a couple days ago, maybe a couple weeks ago actually. So if you're interested in following along and keeping track of everything that I'm going to cook, you can find all of that schedule over on YouTube. And if you're really interested, you can pick up the ingredients for what we're cooking and then cook alongside me. I know a couple folks have started doing that, which is super fun. Always more fun to cook with other people because then we can share in our mistakes. I know I make lots and lots and lots of mistakes, so it's always more fun to make mistakes with other people. In addition to the schedule of stuff, that's also where I keep all of the recipes that go along with everything that I'm cooking. So today's pad thai has a associated recipe video that goes along with it. That lives over on my YouTube channel. And that the recipe videos usually move a little bit slower. Those come out every Friday. Every Tuesday and Thursday, every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday we're streaming, and every Friday we have recipe videos. That all lives over on the YouTube channel. So in addition to the concurrent live stream, which is the computer behind me, I think you can see it. The concurrent live stream behind me, that's for the YouTube stream. In addition to that, I also post all of the recipe videos. That all lives over on YouTube too. So if you're interested in cooking stuff yourself, I recommend hopping over to YouTube and checking out some of that content. Or if you're just interested in watching me cook more stuff, but in like a video format, that's also cool too. Lots of folks like to watch me cut stuff and recipes. So lots of content coming up soon. Last week we did the Beijing beef from Panda Express. A lot of Chinese American food. We've been doing a whole series on Chinese American food. We've done a whole bunch of Thai food too. So I recently did a recipe for another Thai noodle dish called Pad See Ew, which was based loosely off of a noodle dish or a Thai noodle dish from a restaurant here in Oakland called Nichat Thai. So all of that stuff, it lives over on the YouTube channel. So if you're interested in recipe videos and like the written recipe for the pad thai that I'm cooking, and also just like generally fun written recipes, didn't mean to throw that. Just generally fun written recipes for pretty much everything that I cook on stream. All of that lives over on YouTube. So if you want to bop over, there's lots of fun stuff coming up over there. We're working our way to 1,500 subscribers by the end of January. And I hope that we can make it. I'm pretty sure we'll make it. So he makes no mistakes. Chris, I definitely make mistakes. I just don't tell you that I make mistakes. Actually, even sometimes I will tell you that I made mistakes. So for example, just now I just threw a Thai pepper into the sink when I meant to throw the stem of the Thai pepper into the sink. So these are Thai peppers, by the way. Yeah, I saw someone said don't touch your eyes. Very, very important. Thai peppers have a whole lot of capsaicin in it. Capsaicin is what makes peppers so spicy. And the seeds in particular are very, very spicy. So once you start chopping this stuff, do not touch anything. Don't touch your eyes. Don't touch any orifices. I probably wouldn't even put my hands in my mouth either. Really what I should be doing is actually wearing gloves when you cut Thai chilies. I forgot. It'll be fine. But a lot of capsaicin. And that capsaicin, it does not come off when you wash your hands. So it doesn't come off with antibiotics. So even if you wash your hands, that capsaicin is still going to live on your hands for a minute. And that's why actually you really want to be wearing gloves, because it's going to be really hard to get that spice off, or that heat off of your hands. So yes, to amazing mood, to answer your question, or to answer your comment, yes, definitely do not touch your eyes once you cut a Thai chili. If you are particularly averse to spicy stuff, You can also de-seed them, so slice it open and then just remove those seeds. Or you could leave it out entirely. Or if you really don't like hot stuff, you can replace it with a jalapeno, which I've definitely done many times. Those are probably, in America at least, a little bit easier to find. Yeah, if you forget your gloves. I ran out of gloves. Yeah, I don't have any gloves anymore, so. Yeah, Julia, to answer your question, how I got into cooking. So I run a funk band here in Oakland, so I play in a dance band. We're called Trace Repeat. And during COVID, the band just basically doesn't exist anymore because live music doesn't exist anymore. So during the shutdown, I started this YouTube channel kind of on a whim. I'm pretty sure I was drunk when I started it, which is why it's named after another cooking show, which is called the Yang Can Cook. So I called it Woo Can Cook, and then it just sort of evolved into this live stream, and then here we are today. So I don't play music in public anymore because I can't. Hopefully, in the near future, I will. But in the meantime, my employment is basically just this. So I do this. I also host another cooking show hosted by Bay Street Emeryville. That's over on the Bay Street Emeryville Facebook page. That's that I do. So if you're ever wondering why I don't stream stuff on Mondays, that's where I'm cooking stuff. Other people have also asked, do I ever cook stuff that's not Asian, so like American or like steaks, stuff like that. All of that stuff, it lives over on the the Monday Meals page. So that's what I cook on Mondays. So every Monday at 6 p.m. Over on Bay Street, Emeryville, I host a show. It's called Monday Meals with Woo Can Cook, and that is where all of the American and like steaks, pork chops, stuff like that. That's where all of that stuff lives. Why am I tossing the stems? Yeah, good question. So I have stopped using stems in my cilantro, mainly because it's like really chewy, and it kind of gets in the way of cilantro when you eat it as a garnish. But I'm not throwing it away though, so lots of folks ask where all of that stuff is going. So it's going into this bag to my immediate left, yeah, this direction, that way. There's a sink, and I'm sweeping everything into the sink, but I'm not sweeping it into the garbage. It's going into my bag, to this giant Ziploc bag. And what's happening? I also just threw some cilantro into the garbage, which I didn't mean to do. So over to the left, I'm sweeping all of my stems into this big bag. In the bag, I throw this bag into the freezer. This is crazy. This is just a whole leaf. So I throw this bag into the freezer after every time I cook. That's also where I throw things like celery stalks. I threw all of the scraps from my carrots just now into this bag, and then I put it into the freezer, and I freeze it so it stays in there until the next time that I cook something. And then every time I'm ready to or run out of beef stock, I'll usually bag this up, and then I'll throw it. I'll take it out, put it in a pot with some beef bones, and then we'll boil it into beef stock, and that is where all of the beef stock comes from that I use. So to answer your question, why am I picking off the stems? I don't like cilantro stems. If you're using them as garnish and if you're not cooking them, they're really not great. But if you don't mind like kind of stringy, kind of chewy, and especially if you are going to cook the cilantro, so if it is going to have a little bit of cook, I found it works a little bit better. But if so today we're going to be using it specifically as a garnish. And if you are going to use cilantro as a garnish, I've found the stem's a little bit too stringy, and I just generally like pulling it off. Quail ready, yeah, that's the Facebook page, Bay Street Emeryville. So if you're ever wondering, like, if I cook, like, I think last week I did. What did I do last week? I forget what I cooked last week. Oh, I did some refried beans and salsa, which was super fun. The week before that, we did some pork chops. We did some steaks, latkes a couple weeks ago. Stuff like that. All of that lives over on the Monday Meals page. So lots of American food and similar all lives over on Monday Meals. So if you're ever wondering if I cook stuff like that, check that page out for sure. What type of camera am I using? Yeah, I'm actually using 6 different cameras. Yeah, there's 6 different cameras because we're streaming in 2 different places. So there's, for the Reddit stream, there's 3 cameras. So the one that's facing this one right here, that's my phone. So this is just an iPhone. You can see it in the face cam. It's just an iPhone. And then the one on the stove, you can see it behind me. It's just a camcorder. It's like a Canon camcorder. And then the face cam, the one that you're watching me on, is just a It's some kind of Chinese knockoff. It's basically just a webcam, so it's like a low resolution webcam. So nothing special. I don't use anything super fancy. All right, so this is 2 eggs. I'm whisking these up into a smooth and airy whisk. And that's going to be the very last thing that we throw on top of our stir fry. Let's see. Would I ever perform music here? Yeah, I used to actually. I used to do some music on the Reddit streams, and then I kind of just lost interest. But I used to do a lot of like live streaming, I used to do a lot of live looping, and I'm probably gonna get back into it soon. I actually started a new YouTube channel for some of the new music that I've been writing, like in quarantine, and that's all of the music that you're listening to underneath my voiceover. And all of the music that we listen to at the end of every stream. So at the end of every stream, I usually just spin music for the remaining airtime. So lots of times I'll have extra airtime, and I'll spin some tracks. Almost everything that I spin is usually stuff that beats that I've produced, and that's all produced under the side channel called Woo Cooks Beats, which is the music heading that's at the bottom of the channel, bottom of the screen. Good question, though. All right, so I'm crushing up some peanuts. These are honey roasted peanuts, and I've gotten in the habit of using honey roasted peanuts for pad thai, just because I think they add just like a little bit of extra sweetness that just kind of, it's just a really great garnish. I used to use raw peanuts, and I would I would do them in a wok fry, so I would wok fry them really briefly, but I just found that the crunch and the extra sweetness that you get from honey roasted peanuts, it's so perfect. So I loved using honey roasted peanuts lately, and it's got just like a little bit of extra sweetness that just kind of puts it over the top for me. All right, I'm running out of space. You can use a panda crusher. Yeah, I just recently got this mortar and pestle. So I find that I use the mortar and pestle pretty much any chance that I can, because it's a really cool, fun new kitchen gadget that I got. All right. Yeah, Ziploc a bag and a roller. There's lots of easy ways of crushing peanuts. Probably throw them in. You could throw them in a Ziploc bag and then just smack it with the back of the pan, or maybe even the back of your knife, I guess. Let's see. Next up. Let's do our noodles next. Jose, yeah, you've been a fan since the Reddit stream. Yeah, totally. That's awesome. I love it when folks follow over from the Reddit streams, because we can go a little bit longer on YouTube. All right, so next up, I'm going to rehydrate some rice noodles. If you can find them, I recently discovered somewhere to get fresh noodles for pad thai, but I didn't have a chance to buy them. And they're the same as the fresh noodles that I use for pad see ew. But if you can't find them, you can also buy dried rice noodles. They look like this. They kind of look like dry fettuccine, but they are definitely not. So this is going to be true for most Asian noodles, so I do the same thing for jjajangmyeon noodles or chow mein noodles, stuff like that. Any kind of like Chinese noodles, really any kind of Asian noodle. We don't want to throw this stuff into a pot of boiling water, because that boiling water is going to be a lot more aggressive and probably way too aggressive for a type of noodle like this. So instead of throwing it into a pot of boiling water, we're going to throw it into just a plain bowl, and then I'm going to cover it in hot water. And we're going to let it soak for a couple minutes. And that's going to be a little bit more gentle and not so aggressive, and it's going to prevent the noodles from overcooking. So if we had thrown this into straight into a big stock pot, so the same way that you would do like a dry fettuccine or any kind of like Italian pasta, that's going to be a lot more aggressive, and you're going to have a lot of problems because the noodles would pretty quickly overcook. So we don't want to do that, and instead we just want to give it a really gentle cook. So I'm just covering it in some hot water. And then we're going to agitate them. Yeah, fresh noodles so nice, but they also very, very perishable. So fresh rice noodles are extremely perishable. So the way that they package them, it's packaged in oil, and then once you buy them, I would say like coming out of the store, those fresh noodles, they probably only stay for like 2 days max, maybe sometimes 3 days. After that, they start molding, and on top of that, rice noodles, they can get very, very stale in cold temperatures. So you really don't want to refrigerate them either, because they will absolutely get stale and they're not going to rehydrate properly. So I have only done pad ki mao or pad see ew with fresh noodles because I actually don't know where to get fresh, or I tried chow fun. So I only ever do it with fresh noodles, and on 4 separate occasions those noodles started molding, and it was super frustrating because all 4 times I sat down and I was ready to record a recipe video for it, and those stupid noodles kept going bad and they all started molding. And then once it starts molding, it's like it kind of just molds everywhere, so you can't really even pick it apart either. Have I done drunken noodle? Yeah, that would be like pad ki mao. So I did a pad see ew, and then investigated a lot about like what's the, so lots of people have asked this too, is what's the difference between pad see ew and pad ki mao? And the more that I investigated, the more that I discovered is it's really about the like veggies that go into it. So the main differences between a pad see ew and a pad ki mao are the veggies. So pad ki mao is what, like in America, they colloquially call drunken noodles. And the big difference is, so a pad see ew is traditionally just chow fun with a dark soy sauce base, with usually gailan, so Chinese broccoli. And a pad ki mao would be any kind of like pad see ew that incorporates additional veggies. So oftentimes you'll see the use of things like carrots, sometimes bell peppers, any kind of additional veggie. That's kind of what makes it a drunken noodle or a pad ki mao. So to answer your question, I did do a pad see ew, but then I stopped just short of doing a drunken noodle because I discovered they're essentially the same thing. So. Yeah, definitely if you want to rewatch it, I would pop over to the YouTube channel and look for the pad see ew video, and I talked a little bit more about what's the difference, for sure. Yeah, Real Dirty Dan. Yeah, that's the channel. So it's Woo Can Cook on YouTube. So it's youtube.com/WooCanCook. That would be the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen if you're watching on Reddit. That's the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, it's the channel that you're already on, so you're already there. Yeah, glad you caught the stream. Yeah. Lots of folks find the stream on Reddit and then they pop over to YouTube. So I know there's quite a few people watching on YouTube. And the face cam crows, yes. So if you're watching on YouTube and you notice that the face cam freezes, feel free to just tell me that it freezes. You'll also notice that there's a donation bar at the bottom of the YouTube channel. I never really asked for money for these streams. I'm not really trying to make a profit on this stuff. But the reason that we're raising money on the YouTube stream is because that stupid camera keeps freezing all the time. So what's happening is that the stove camera is freezing. And then when the stove camera freezes, it causes the face camera to freeze. So if you notice, if you're watching on YouTube and you notice that the face camera freezes, that's right. That's why we're trying to raise money, is because of that stupid camera, and it has to be replaced. So, all right. So those are our rice noodles. We're gonna let this soak. So I agitated it. That was maybe like 5 minutes, maybe a little bit less than that. Really, you only need to agitate it for the first duration of time until it's like a little bit tender and it has like a little bit of give. Once it starts giving a little bit, you can kind of just let it sit and let it soak in that water, and it will become tender in the hot water. All right. Next up, this is some chicken thigh. Someone asked earlier what kind of protein we were using. I have done this recipe with a lot of different kinds of proteins. I've definitely done it with chicken breast. Probably the main thing that I use is chicken breast because it's the main kind of chicken that I usually have on hand. When I did the recipe video, I definitely did it with tofu. So if you're a vegetarian, you can definitely use tofu and it will work just fine. I think, so I'm opting for chicken breast today mainly because I have it and it was defrosted already. But also I think that the inclusion of the extra fat that you get from chicken breast is going to work really, really nicely because pad thai is already a very, very lean noodle. So not a lot of not a lot of fat in the fat content in noodles, or like just generally not a lot of richness. So like as opposed to a pad see ew, for example, or a drunken noodle, which has a really, really thick dark soy sauce, and that dark soy sauce makes it extremely rich. So when I have done drunken noodles or pad see ew, I have tended toward using chicken breast because it's a little bit less rich, less fatty, and it has like a little bit less richness to it. For a pad thai, I'm using chicken thigh because it doesn't have quite as much richness, and I think it's going to work really well. Right. So for this chicken, I'm going for pretty thin slices here. We don't need to be super thin, but I do want to make sure that we have nice long thin strips. That's going to be like the most typical shape and size of chicken that you get with pad thai. Did I misspeak? Yeah, so we to answer your question, yes. So we soaked those noodles. We agitated the noodles for about 5 minutes. The main reason that we agitate is to make sure that they don't really stick together. But once they are like a little bit tender and you have a little bit of give in the noodles, so once they kind of start looking like cooked noodles, they might still be a little al dente, I guess, if you like are familiar with Italian cooking. Like once they kind of look al dente, but they're definitely like not finished cooking, you can let it go and just sort of let it sit for maybe another 5-10 minutes, and they're really not going to stick together after that. But if definitely in those first like 5 minutes, when you first combine it or first add it to water, there's definitely a high potential that they will stick together, and then you'll get this like a big globby mess of rice noodles, which is not good. How am I looking at the chat while cutting? Yeah. So that's the technique I was talking about. So someone asked this a little bit earlier too, techniques about cutting. So what's happening is, so I'm cutting, but my knuckles are down. So the knife is against my knuckles. So I don't really actually need to even look at the knife anymore because I know where the knife is because it's pressed up against my knuckles. So that's how lots of times you see people like chopping stuff, but they're looking up, or like chopping really, really fast. That's actually one of the signature moves of Yan Can Cook, is he would like look at the camera and have this super goofy smile on his face, and then we just chop really, really fast. And that's because the knife is up against his knuckles. Sometimes, like especially in like Chinese cooking, they'll even do it with just like a single finger. So they'll do it like this, and they'll go like this, which is like crazy. I can't do it that fast. But that's how you can chop stuff without actually looking, is because the contact, your knuckle making contact with the knife, is telling you where the knife is. So you actually don't even need to look because your knuckle is telling you where it is. Master chef? Oh yeah, I don't think I'm a master chef. That would be crazy though. All right, so for our chicken, I'm not actually going to do a whole lot to this marinade. I might add a pinch of salt to give it a little bit of depth. And mainly what I want to add is a tiny little bit of cornstarch. So the reason that we use cornstarch in meat marinades, especially in wok stir fries, I really mean a small amount. That's like half a teaspoon. We're going to give it a tiny little bit of cornstarch, and then we're going to let sort of coat the whole thing in that cornstarch. And it's going to protect the chicken from overcooking in the like really, really aggressive wok stir fries. So we do the same thing anytime we do wok fried eggs too. And what we're trying to do is make sure that that really, really aggressive heat from the wok doesn't cause the chicken to overcook. So anytime you see the use of meat in a stir fry, very, very frequently you will see it combined with cornstarch first, or given like a very, very slight cornstarch coating. You see the same thing with wok fried eggs too. And that's to prevent it from like getting super rubbery. So that way we can throw it into a really, really aggressive heat like a wok, and it won't turn into rubber. So the cornstarch, that's what's keeping it from overcooking. Right. Yeah, you thought it was Wu Can Cook. Yes. So the name of the channel, the name of my channel is called Wu Can Cook. When I created it, it was loosely based off of a PBS cooking show called Yan Can Cook, which was hosted by a guy named Martin Yan. So my channel is not an original idea, or not an original name. It's based off of, or an homage to Martin Yan, and his cooking show, which is called Yan Can Cook. So if you haven't checked that out yet, I definitely recommend go find yourself some old Yan Can Cook replays. Yan Can Cook, I don't think it exists anymore. I think that show is gone for good. But definitely, yeah, it's not a. It's an homage to Martin Yan. Alright, so next up, I'm just going to combine my sauce here. So this is going to be 4 tablespoons of tamarind paste. Followed by, this is how many? 6 tablespoons of fish sauce. 6 tablespoons or a quarter cup. And these 2 ingredients are probably the 2 quintessential ingredients that you associate with the flavor of pad thai. So the real fishiness of fish sauce, that's where that real iconic taste of pad thai, that's where it comes from, is fish sauce. So if you're vegetarian, or if you're vegan, I guess more specifically, they definitely make vegetarian pad thai fish sauce. So you can totally find this stuff not derived from fish. I believe it's derived from mushroom powder, I think. And I think that's how they create vegetarian fish sauce. The label of the ingredients, yeah. So this is actually not one that I would recommend. This is all I could find though. So this is just Lee Kum Kee pad thai sauce. When you find your own pad thai sauce, don't look for this stuff. I couldn't find it today, and I actually went out and bought this today. But what you want to look for is tamarind paste. So the Lee Kum Kee pad thai sauce is a mix of a few things. So it's a mix of tamarind paste plus, I believe, shallots, ginger, and garlic, which I don't like that. But what you should look for is tamarind paste. Don't buy that one. And this is just fish sauce. This is probably like the most common fish sauce that you'll find, at least in like Asian markets, is the squid fish sauce. You gotta go to sleep. Yeah, I'll see you later, man. You use dates instead of tamarind paste. I didn't know that that's cool. All right. Hello to everyone just joining before we bop over to the stove. My name is Wesley. This is Wok Can Cook. Today we're doing a Thai noodle dish called pad thai. Pad thai, if you've never had it, is probably, in the States at least, one of the more popular Thai noodle dishes that you'll get at like Thai noodle takeout, stuff like that. I would say probably the most popular one. So if you've never had it, pad thai is a Thai noodle dish that uses rice noodles and relies very, very heavily on the use of tamarind paste, which we just combined together. Because of its use of tamarind paste and fish sauce, those are probably the 2 like most present ingredients in their sauce. And it's probably the thing that you associate most with pad thai. So if you're interested in what we're cooking today, all of the things that I cook on live stream, including this one, have a recipe video that go along with it. I usually probably cycle through, pretty much just cycling through my recipe book, which is I think like maybe 30 recipes or so. So some folks ask if I cook the same thing all the time. But it's really like maybe the same 25, 30 things. And I'm pretty much just cycling through all of those recipes. So this is a recipe that I released a couple months ago that lives over on the YouTube channel. Some folks are already watching on YouTube because we're also concurrently live streaming over on YouTube, which is the computer behind me. So, in addition to all of the recipe videos, that's where I also post all of the schedule of the live streams that I'm going to be doing next. So if you were watching on live stream on YouTube, you would have known probably a couple weeks ago that I would be doing pad thai today. So there's a nice schedule going on over there. And if you want, you can also look up what we're going to be cooking and then pick up the ingredients for what we're going to be cooking and cook along with me. So I know lots of folks have started doing that. So we're here every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 p.m. PST and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. PST doing fun dishes. And every Friday there's a new recipe video coming out. So last Friday we did the Beijing beef from Panda Express. That was super fun. Friday before that I believe we did Pad See Ew. And the Friday before that I think we did Westlake soup. So we have a couple series going on right now. There's one series that's based on stuff from TV. There's another series that's based on stuff from restaurants here in the Bay Area, and there's a third series that's based on Chinese American foods. So we've been doing like a whole series on reproducing stuff from Panda Express and PF Chang's and kind of deconstructing Chinese American food and then reconstructing it as if it were traditional Chinese food. So like taking a look at General Tso's chicken and then removing all of the American ingredients and replacing them with traditional Chinese ingredients. And then there's a second series that's based off of just reproducing stuff from restaurants here in the Bay Area. So the pad see ew dish that I did was based off of a pad see ew from a restaurant here in Oakland called Ni Cha Thai, which specifically uses American broccoli versus the use of gailan. And that was based off of a recipe in Oakland called Ni Cha Thai. And then there's a third series that we're doing that reproduces food from TV shows. It's basically just binging with Babish, but Chinese. So the last thing that I did was the sweet buns from Legend of Korra, which was super fun because I had a reason to make sweet buns. Yeah, cook with me next week, totally. Definitely the next 2 weeks are up on YouTube already. All right, so all of that stuff, it lives over on YouTube. So if you're interested in cooking along with me or just watching me cook other stuff on the internet, all of that is over on the YouTube channel. So if you're watching on YouTube, that would be the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. There's also a little bit more airtime, or there's no airtime cap over there. So we were going to go a little bit longer, probably. And that's at youtube.com/WooCanCook. Lots of fun stuff over there. All right, so my wok is ripping hot. This is about as hot as a wok is going to get on a home range. But because we're cooking on a home range, we have a little bit less heat potential because home ranges don't get quite as hot as the ranges at like Thai restaurants and stuff. So what we're going to do is a process in home wok cooking called batch cooking. We're essentially going to cook part of what we're going to eat and then removing it from the wok and then cooking our second ingredients and then adding everything together at the very, very end. So the only point where everything will be in the wok is at the very end when we're essentially just combining everything. But during the time when we're really trying to flash cook stuff, we're not going to have a whole bunch of stuff in the wok. And that's going to prevent our wok from dropping in heat. All right, so I'm starting with my aromatics. That's my garlic going in, followed by my ginger. And my shallots. If you're following the written recipe, at this point you wouldn't have shallots, you would have green onions. So if you're following that written recipe, I would say add the whites of the green onions at this point, and then reserve those greens for later. And we're sauteing this. That will take maybe 30 seconds, maybe a little less than a minute. And we're just looking for fragrance, so we're waiting until we smell ginger, garlic, and shallot. And that is when you know your aromatics have become aromatic. What type of oil am I using? That was today I'm using grapeseed oil. I've kind of gotten in the habit. I really like grapeseed oil. I think it's super neutral. It's about as neutral as vegetable oil though, and also pretty about as healthy as vegetable oil too. So, but you can use anything that has high heat, a high smoke point. So you could use canola. You could also use vegetable. I love grapeseed oil right now. You could also use peanut oil, probably the most traditional thing in a wok cook too. All right, so I'm adding my Thai chilies next. At this point, you want to make sure that your windows are open, because if you're not opening your windows, Thai chilies, they smoke up really, really fast because of all of the capsaicin in it. So you definitely want to make sure your windows are open and you have your smoke detectors unplugged, because this is going to spit up a bunch of smoke for sure. Avocado oil, yeah, another good one. Like avocado oil has kind of like been super trendy in the last like 5 years or so, I feel like, because I don't remember like seeing a lot of avocado oil when I was growing up. All right, so our aromatics are nice and fragrant, so I'm going to drop in my chicken next. Not a lot of moisture in our chicken, so I don't have to worry about holding off any moisture. And that cornstarch is going to do a lot of work for us right now, because our wok heat is very, very hot, and it will absolutely overcook if we're not careful. So that's going to go. That will probably take maybe another minute or two. I'm also noticing, so I think you can tell, but my wok is pretty quiet right now. So if you listen, there's not a lot of sizzling happening in my wok, and that's a sign that your wok is losing heat very quickly. So if at any point you're still cooking stuff and you hear that your wok is not sizzling a lot, that's a sign that you don't have enough heat in the wok. So very simple solution when that happens: stop moving your wok. Let it sit for a minute, and that heat will return eventually. While that's happening, I'll pop back over to the stove board. I'm draining the water out of my noodles. So unlike with Italian cooking, where we would be very religious, diligently reserving pasta water, that's not really a thing in Asian cooking. We don't really need this water because we have added starch in other places. So really what we're doing is just making sure that we get all of this water out. We want our rice noodles to be as dry as we possibly can get them. Because the more moisture that you have in your rice noodles, the more moisture you will be introducing into your wok when you add them. And the more moisture that's in your wok, the more trouble you're going to have with heat retention. So we want to try and make sure that we introduce as little moisture as possible in our wok. All right, I guess I should switch back over here. Oops, wrong one. There it is. All right, so over on the stove, our chicken is maybe 50% of the way cooked through. We don't need this to be fully cooked through, but we do want it to be about 80-90% cooked before we remove it. My gas burner is as high as it possibly can go. It is also the largest burner on my stove. So this is the hottest, highest burner that I have in my house. So we want as much heat as you possibly can get. It is not going to be as hot as a restaurant burner, but it will still be okay, as long as you use some batch cooking processes. All right, that's looking good. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this out. Also out of bowls. Whoops. Don't do that. All right, so next what we want to do is rinse everything out of your wok. So actually, I think we'll be okay. Normally, I usually recommend rinsing your wok out before you move on to your next ingredient. Usually the reason that I recommend that is because everything that remains in your wok is going to have the potential to burn, which you really want to avoid happening. The downside to doing that is that you lose all of the fat. So what still remains in our wok right now is a whole bunch of chicken fat, because that all came from the chicken thigh. I actually don't think this stuff is going to burn, so I'm going to leave it behind, but I might actually regret doing that because I actually starting to see it burning already. But we'll see. So I'm adding my carrots next. And I would like this to be a little bit hotter, so I'm going to stop moving it. Where did I learn to cook? Just watching other people do it, mostly just on the internet. I just spend a lot of time watching other people cook stuff, so that's really how I learned how to cook. Didn't go to school for anything. I went to school for music. 1 minute left on the Reddit stream. Okay, I might restart the Reddit stream if I lose you. All right, so I would like my wok to be a little bit hotter. I'm not getting enough sizzle, so I'm going to kind of just let that sit for a second and let some of that heat return to my wok. I probably, if I was being really diligent about it, should have stopped and let the wok reheat before I added those carrots in. So if you're counting mistakes, I think that's the second mistake today. But that's okay. The other thing that we're going to want to pay attention to is that our chicken has a whole bunch of moisture in it. So this is a few things. This is probably some parts oil and some parts fat. We want to be careful not to introduce too much of this fat. I'm going to keep some of it because that's all flavor. But we want to be careful not to introduce too much of that fat back to our final stir fry because that's all going to be moisture that helps contribute to a soggy stir fry. So keep off as much of that moisture as you possibly can. 5 seconds. Okay, I'm going to lose the red stream. I'm just going to restart it. So 88 other people watching. I'll restart the stream if you want to pop over. Cool. All right, so next up, for our carrots, we have a little bit more heat going on now. I'm a little bit more happy about that. I'm going to do is start introducing some sauce here. And the reason that we're introducing sauce very gradually is because we're building a nice depth of flavor with our stir fry here. So by adding sauce to just our carrots, it gives us a nice depth of flavor that gives your carrots some independent flavor, which is going to be very nice because then your carrots will taste like something. Otherwise, they'll just taste like nothing. Oops. On camera. All right. Next, I'm adding my chicken back to the wok. As I mentioned earlier, I'm reserving some of this liquid, or as a little bit of it, going in because a lot of that is chicken fat. All right. And very last up, I'm adding my noodles back to the wok. So our rice noodles going in. How do you look at the Reddit stream for the name? The Reddit stream is the same as the YouTube. So it's just Woo Can Cook on all of the social media platforms. So Instagram too, Woo Can Cook. All right, so I'm tossing this to combine. You will notice definitely once you introduce those rice noodles that you're going to start losing heat very, very rapidly in your wok. That's okay because we're also done flash cooking stuff. But if you notice this drop in heat and you're still cooking stuff, that's a real bad sign. And you want to stop doing what you're doing if you notice a real fast drop in heat and you're still cooking. But for our case, we're very, very close to being done cooking. So it is okay to lose a little bit of heat here. Because we're not really flash cooking anything anymore. Really what we're doing is just combining stuff. That's okay. Yeah, cool. Yeah, glad folks found the second stream. All right, so very last up, I'm adding my eggs. And this is going to be the last thing that we add to our stir fry. The reason that we add our eggs very, very last is because we're trying to coat our noodles in eggs. We can turn this off. As opposed to, so yesterday we did a Hawaiian fried rice. And we did a very similar process up until the very end. And when we introduced our eggs, what we did was we moved everything to one side like this, cleared a whole bunch of space in the wok, and then added our eggs to that cleared space. And the goal with a fried rice, when you do that, is to create some nice egg curds. So we're looking for essentially scrambled eggs in your fried rice. And that's the quality that you associate with like eggs in fried rice. In this particular stir fry, or at least I guess with almost every Thai noodle dish that I've ever had, we treat eggs a little bit differently. So our goal here is not to get nice egg curds, but to coat our rice noodles in egg. So now as those eggs start cooking, when you add them on top of the noodles, we have these nice coated noodles that are covered in like egg coating. And that's our goal here. So we're actually not looking for egg curds in the way that you would look for it in a fried rice, but what we're looking for are these nice egg-covered noodles. And that's like the quality of egg that you associate with most Thai dishes. So definitely pad Thai, but also pad see ew, pad Kim Mao, all of those rice noodle dishes that have a nice egg coating on top of it. Pretty much every Thai rice noodle dish that I've ever had has that nice egg coating. So it is like exactly the opposite of the way that you would treat a fried rice. All right. So I'm killing my heat, and if you have noticed, I also reserved the last little bit of our sauce. So I've gotten in the habit of doing that. And what I'm doing is I'm reserving that last bit to make sure that we don't over season. So what you want to do before you add that last half is taste it and see if it needs it. Probably even want to reserve a little bit more than that. And pay attention. Yeah, it does not need it, so I'm not going to add it. I might add a little bit. But not all of it, though. You'll also notice, so lots of folks have pointed out, that I didn't add any salt. The only place that I added salt was in the chicken marinade. And that is very, very intentional. I found, I say this in a lot of stir-fry dishes, but I found that this is particularly true with tamarind paste, is that those layers of umami that we just built up, they kind of get in the way or salt kind of gets in the way a lot. So the salt is kind of in the opposite direction of umami. So lots of people associate umami with saltiness, but it's actually not salty. It's just savory, and that's very, very different. So I've found that when you add salt to pad thai, oftentimes it gets really, really distracting and can distract from the umami that you get from tamarind paste. So I have stopped adding salt to my pad thais almost completely. And I very, very rarely use salt in wok stir fries in general because I just find that it kind of distracts from umami in general. Is the heat solely from the peppers? More or less. Like, the really, really aggressive heat or spiciness comes from the peppers. But also a lot of that heat is coming from the tamarind paste too, for sure. But the really aggressive stuff, it comes from the Thai peppers. So if you're afraid of heat, or if you just don't particularly like heat, you could either leave them out completely, or you could use something a little bit less hot. So Thai chilies are definitely like in the realm of like chilies that I regularly eat. It's probably one of the most aggressive ones. So you could use a jalapeno pepper. I think the original recipe that I wrote calls for a jalapeno pepper instead of Thai chilies. Although I have found that the flavor of a Thai chili, so the spiciness the heat that you get from a Thai chili, is very iconically and quintessentially the flavor of Thai food. So when you substitute the Thai chilies for something else, it's really not the same, and you're losing like something that's very quintessentially Thai food. So using a jalapeno pepper, you can totally do it, and it's going to taste just fine. It's going to taste really good, actually. But it's that Thai chili, it adds just a little bit of something that's like real nice. The other thing I was going to use it, but then I ended up not using, was some sambal olek. So here's my sambal olek. I ended up not using this, and I think what I'm going to do is add it on top when I serve the dish. But if you're looking for a little bit more heat, sambal olek, that's definitely going to be like right in the world of like traditional like Thai flavors, sambal olek. I was going to add it to the sauce, and then I kind of decided against it at the last minute. All right. So last thing that we want to do with a wok stir fry, if you've watched these streams before, you'll know that I say this at the end of almost every wok stir fry that I do. The very last thing that we want to do is remove everything from the wok and clean your wok. Before you go and sit down and eat, clean it first. While the wok is still hot, especially true for carbon steel woks like this one, the wok has a real nice non-stick surface, so everything, I'm just rinsing everything off in the sink and let it sit for a little too long. But almost everything is coming off. So the only thing that's really remaining right now is my eggs. So if I had gone and sat down and then cleaned my wok, all of this stuff would have stuck to the wok, and then you would have a very, very dirty wok that's going to be a real pain in the butt to clean. And then when that happens, then you have to start doing stuff that you really don't want to be doing with carbon steel. Things like scrubbing and like breaking out your sponges and steel wool, all of that stuff. You can do it, but it is eventually going to start damaging the seasoning of your wok. So you start getting in a world that you really don't want to be in. So good wok care. Clean it while it's still hot. But if you do find that stuff has stuck to your wok, like mine, so this is probably the egg that's getting stuck. If you've done it correctly and you still have a non-stick surface, it should come right off with the wooden spoon. So I'm just scraping everything off as if I was still cooking, basically. I'm just giving the bottom of my wok a nice scrape, and all of that stuff is coming off with the spoon. And then I'm going to give it one more rinse. There we go. Now we have a very nice clean wok. Yeah, burn off the, yeah, totally. You have issues making large quantities for the family meals. Strong coffee, yeah, totally. How do you cook for a whole family without crowding? Yeah, so totally, I've had that problem too. So I've definitely, the first couple of times that I made this pad thai, I made it for a lot of people. I think I made it for like 6 people or something. I don't think it was the first time, it was maybe the second or third time, and I definitely ran into very, very similar problems because you have to cook a huge amount of food in batches, which is going to be really, really annoying. So the best way to do it is find a really hot burner, and then you can cook everything in the same wok. But if you don't have a really, really hot burner, the next best thing is some kind of batch cooking. So usually, if I was cooking when I was cooking for 6 people, I think I was doing maybe twice this recipe. So this is probably enough to feed maybe 2 or 3 people. When I did it for 6 people, what I did is I just started cooking in batches. So I think I did everything in 3 different batches. So I basically literally just cooked it like 3 separate times. And like the best part about wok frying is that the wok part only takes a very short amount of time. So I think the duration of time that we were actually on the wok was very, very short. I think maybe like 10 minutes, even less than that. Most of the time that we were on the wok, I was just talking. So when I'm not talking, usually the wok frying comes together within like even less time, maybe 5 minutes. So if you have to triple it, that really won't take too much time. I could probably in the wok portion of a pad thai wok stir fry, I could probably do that within like, I don't know, 15 minutes tops. And like the bulk of the time that you spend on a pad thai is going to be in the prep. So. All right. So I'm just coating my wok with a little bit of oil. Remember to coat the bottom of your wok too. Coat all parts of your wok. The big reason that we coat our woks in oil is not just for the cooking surface, it's also to make sure that your wok doesn't oxidize. So we're trying to make sure that we don't damage the wok. So in order to make sure that it doesn't damage, we don't just need to coat just the inside, we actually need to coat all parts. That's to make sure that nothing in the wok starts rusting. Super important. Make sure you coat the bottom. So we have this nice cooking top, but also on the bottom we have a nice carbon steel bottom that is not going to rust because it's covered in oil too. Oops, wrong one. Right. So, strong coffee, yeah, totally. How much do I spend? Yeah. Let's see. Ooh, lots of questions. Yeah, steel woks. So mine is carbon steel. I like a good cast iron. My parents' wok, when I would first learned wok cooking, is a stainless steel wok, which worked really great too. So I learned on a stainless steel, and then I moved over to carbon steel. Where are my tongs? Okay, there. All right. So I'm finishing this with some peanuts on top and some cilantro. If you were following the written recipe, I believe it leaves the cilantro out and uses the greens of the green onions as our garnish. That was the reason, I think the main inspiration for going with a shallot today instead of the green onions is because I have fresh cilantro for the first time in a while, so I can use it as a garnish today. But if you don't have fresh cilantro but you do have green onions, you can just use green onions and then top it with the greens. Really just needs a little splash of color. I think that's what it really needs. It's also missing a certain veggie. So I was planning on using some bean sprouts, but the bean sprouts went bad, and then I was from there planning on using some bamboo shoots to substitute that, but then the bamboo shoots went bad too. So I ended up with just one veggie today, which is kind of a bummer. But the bean sprouts would have been really great. So if you have bean sprouts, that would be really great. Or if you don't, a second, like any kind of second veggie would be real cool. But this will work too. And I'm finishing everything with a squeeze of lime. So if you're following there's a famous book by Samir Nosrat called Fat, Salt, Acid, Heat, I think. And it's basically the principle that everything that you cook contains four main ingredients: salt, fat, acid, and heat. The last bit of acid that we're adding is the lime. In my general experience, pretty much all cooking contains some form of acid. In Chinese cooking, lots of times it's some form of alcohol, so you run into things like rice vinegar or Shaoxing wine. In Italian cooking, oftentimes it's kind of like white wine or red wine, anything alcoholic, all of those things are acid. In Thai cooking, the very, very big and prominent is very frequently is lime. So we use lime as our finisher because it has all of the acidic elements that we're looking for. And that is the final thing. And that's where the last bit of acidity comes from our pad thai. Whoa, dude, that's a cool YouTube screen name. Whoa, dude. Am I gonna put the red sauce? Yeah. I'm gonna. I don't think I'm gonna add it. I might add it on the table. I'm gonna start eating, and if I think it needs it, then I'll add it. I actually don't think it needs it though, because of those Thai chilies. The Thai chilies are really, really aggressive when I tasted it, so I think I'm gonna hold off on it actually. But again, it like really depends on like how much heat do you want in your pad thai. Yeah, sambal oelek, that's the stuff. It looks like this. If you're looking for sambal oelek, if you like, lots of times I see like knockoff sambal oeleks come up in like Trader Joe's and Safeway and stuff. It's the one with the rooster on it, and it's made by, I believe it's made by the same company that makes sriracha. And you want to look for the one with the rooster on it. That's like the really authentic Thai sambal oelek. Everything else is some kind of copy, and I've seen like a lot of American copies that are essentially just ketchup, and it's not good. Look for the one with the rooster on it. Cool. I think that's it. I think we did everything. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for if you're following on Reddit and hopped over to YouTube. Thanks for following over to YouTube. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. If you haven't followed over to YouTube yet, I definitely recommend bopping over to YouTube and checking out what we're doing over there. Lots of folks are already over on YouTube, which is really cool. Thank you all for following over on YouTube too. If you haven't yet, YouTube is where I keep the whole schedule of things that I'm going to be cooking within the next couple of weeks. So I think the next, up until like 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks now, have all of the food that I'm going to be cooking on the live streams. That's every Tuesday and Thursday at 6:30 PST and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. PST. And that whole schedule, it lives over on YouTube. So if you want to take a look at what I'm going to be cooking in the next few weeks and like tune in for the ones that you're interested in, or if you're really committed, you can find the ones that you're interested in and pick up the ingredients and cook alongside me, which is super fun. Always more fun to cook with other people because we can share all of the mistakes that we make. I know I made plenty of mistakes today. I make mistakes in pretty much everything that I cook, especially if I'm like distracted and talking to people. So I definitely make a lot of mistakes. So it's always more fun to share our mistakes together, and we can talk about what we make mistakes doing, and that way we can learn from each other's mistakes. So real fun. In addition to the schedule, that's also where all of the recipe videos for my live streams go. So everything that I cook on live stream has an associated recipe video that goes along with it, including this one. So every Friday, so every Tuesday and Thursday we're streaming, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday we're streaming, and every Friday is when we release new recipe videos. So last Friday, I did a recipe video for Beijing beef, which is adding to our series on Chinese American food. Egg drop soup, yeah, totally. That would be the Westlake soup, which we did a couple weeks ago. And we're going to be cooking it on stream, I think, in 2 weeks maybe. And that, like all of that stuff, it lives over on the YouTube channel. So the Westlake soup was specifically based off of a Westlake soup from a restaurant here in the Bay Area called Dragon House. And that was adding to our series on local Bay Area restaurants. So it's based off of a restaurant in San Francisco called Dragon House. The Pad See Ew was another one that's based off of a restaurant in Oakland called Ni Cha Thai. It's been super fun. We have a couple series that's been going on. There's the Chinese American food one, which is basically just replicating a whole bunch of food from like Panda Express, P.F. Chang's, lots of Chinese American stuff, and kind of dissecting Chinese American food and then reassembling it without all of the American ingredients and seeing what like those really iconic Chinese American dishes like honey sesame chicken or General Tso's chicken, kung pao chicken, reassembling them and seeing what they look like when they don't have all of those American qualities, and what they would taste like if you were eating traditional Chinese food, if they were traditional Chinese dishes, and seeing what that would taste like. So that's our Chinese American series. I'm also doing another series that's entirely based off of food from TV and movies. So basically binging with Babish, but for like Chinese food, which is super fun. I did a whole series on The Legend of Korra, so I did their sweet custard buns, did some cocktail buns, then we did some sticky rice buns. There's so much food in Legend of Korra and Avatar, so the Legend of Korra and the Avatar series is just the gold mine of like fun Chinese foods to cook. So if you're interested in content like that and checking out some more stuff of me cooking stuff, I definitely recommend hopping over and checking that out. Lots of folks already watching on YouTube too, so pop over. If you want to help us, we're working our way to a 1,500 subscriber goal by the end of January. I'm pretty sure we're going to make it. We're very rapidly moving very close to that goal already, so that's super fun. Hey, the alert box worked. That's awesome. I finally fixed the alert box. Thank you for subscribing, Brian. I've been trying to fix that alert box for literally months, and it finally fixed. So I have to change it back. There's a zombie. There's supposed to be a hamster eating ramen, but that's Hamcharo, or that's supposed to be Hamcharo. Hamcharo is very hungry. He only eats ramen when we get a new subscriber. So if you haven't yet, hop over to YouTube, check that out. 1,500 by the end of January. Pretty sure we'll hit it. So. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. My name is Wesley. This is Woo Can Cook. Stick around. I'm still going to be around cleaning dishes and stuff. So if you have any questions that I missed, feel free to drop your questions in the comments. I don't know everything about Thai cooking, but I know lots of stuff. I'm going to turn the mic packs off, but I could still reply in the chat and stuff. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer everyone. I'm going to spin some music too, so check out some music. All right, see y'all soon.
Give into that easy living, goodbye to my Leave it with the babysitter, mama call Stumbling